Come join us for an unforgettable adventure. We travel by Paramotor, 4,000 kilometres across this big wide land of ours. Watch on as three mates set out to do what had never been done before. 43 flights stretching from the magical Kalbarri in the west to the brilliant Byron Bay in the east. At times reaching speeds of 140 kilometres an hour, and at others no more than 24. Crossing vast deserts and challenging mountain ranges, skirting the coast of three oceans and untold flooded plains. You'll see the highlights and the lowlights, the joys of success and the tears of failure. And along the way you'll also find out what it means to really grab life by the balls. In this first episode, after months of preparations, we finally begin our epic journey in West Australia's hidden gem, the beautiful town of Kalbarri. From there we have 14 flights over 9 days covering nearly 1,000 kilometres to finally wind up in stormy Norseman. Along the way we'll fly over the amazing pink lakes, some groovy humpback whales, a picture perfect patchwork of landscapes as we cross the wheat belt, and we also managed to screw up plenty of launches, smash some props and deal with plenty of in-flight setbacks. Please join us. Departure on Saturday, just been going over the equipment today, making sure everyone's looking good. I haven't been in the air today because the winds have been too strong. How you going, Gary? You ready for the big flight on Saturday?
Super ready, mate. Excited. I've prepared my machine. I've got to the start line.
Yep.
The exhaust is on.
Good. Dave?
Mate, can't wait. 3,500 kilometres, 4,000 kilometres to get here, mate. Happy to fly the 5,000 home.
Yeah, here's Dave's machine over. After a month on the road, travelling from the east coast of Australia across to the west coast, we arrived in Kalbarri, and fortunately Tim's had booked us a house right on the coast there for 5 nights. And we took that opportunity to relax and get everything ready, prepare for the journey ahead, and enjoy a little bit of comfort there in the house for a few days. While we're there we did plenty of flights and around town and along the coast. Just an amazing place to visit. Can't emphasise enough how lovely Kalbarri is and how many places there are to see and enjoy. We practiced a lot of our takeoffs and landings and made sure everything was up and ready to go, all except our communications, which last minute glitch turned the comms off. During our first official flight, my flight tracker turned itself off mid-flight and I lost the recording. So here you've got the recording from the week earlier where we flew up the coast from Linton Station to Kalbarri. This is a magic flight, and Tim's commented that the trip across from Victoria had been worth it just for this flying along the coast and experiencing all the joys that entailed with the whales and pink lakes and everything else to see. Unfortunately on this flight, Gary Bell, his exhaust cracked off and went through his prop round about there, and so he had to land out just prior to the township of Kalbarri, but we went back and picked him up later. The Pink Lakes, or Hutt Lagoon, is best experienced from the air, and we're lucky enough to be able to do that with our paramotors, and we took that opportunity plenty of times to explore the region and get some great footage from up there. The pink in the lakes caused by the algae, which releases a pigment called beta-carotene. Gary, Dave and myself did heaps of flights out over the coast, and there was hardly a time when we didn't see whales out there, and sometimes half a dozen whales with their calves, and it was a unique experience to fly so close to the whales and to see them playing with their calves. Was just truly unforgettable. Linton Station is a really top place to spend some time. The people there, Greg and Jenny, the managers, are very helpful, lovely people, and they did everything they could to make our stay there unforgettable. They drove us up to Kalbarri. They drove our vehicles up there so the three of us could all fly up together. and can't say enough about these people. Okay, we're all set up for the afternoon flight. I've got the extra fuel bag hooked up, 8 litres to go along with the 15 litres in the tank, and we're going to head east. Prior to arriving in Kalbarri, we'd spent 4 nights at Linton Station and really enjoyed our stay there. As I said before, the people are wonderful and they looked after us and did everything they could to make our stay there enjoyable. So it was a little bit sad to finally say goodbye and fly off into the sunset, so to speak. But we knew we had to keep going, so we said our farewells, and with a bit of an easterly wind blowing on a Sunday afternoon, we headed off to Malawa via Northampton. We didn't make a lot of headway. We were averaging about 30 kilometres per hour, and in the afternoon we only managed an extra 54 kilometres into the journey. But we were off and away, so we were happy with that. And as the sun started to set, we started looking for a place to land, and without any prior planning, we found a nice little clearing on the side of the road, and with Dave and I flying along, we gave our hand signals to, yeah, that'll do, let's land there. And suffering, comms weren't that great, but we worked it out, and as we come into land we found a good spot, put it down for the night and set up camp in preparation for the next day, where Gary and I were planning a flight, and we headed off once again hoping to get to Malawa, and here I am doing donuts waiting for Gary to take off, but eventually got up in the air and off we go, travelling at an average speed of 24 kilometres an hour. Now this was the slowest flight of the whole trip. I tried a few different heights, try to see if we could avoid that strong easterly wind, but there wasn't much to be gained from it, so we basically gave up after an hour's flight and put it down in an airfield there and waited for the afternoon. The afternoon came around and the winds had dropped off, and Dave and I took off again, and we're travelling nice and low, down low, and we were making good headway, or a lot better than what we were in the morning, and average speeds of about 40 kilometres an hour. We were very close to the road, down low, and staying under that wind. We managed another 52 kilometres before the sun started to set again, and we once again looked for somewhere to land and set up camp for the night. And we come across this crossing in the side of the road. We thought, well, that'll do us. We'd almost run out of daylight, so that was the spot we were going to land. And that was one of the coldest nights we had there, a place called Teninjua. This is Gary taking off in the morning. Beautiful launch, picture perfect. Off he goes. Unfortunately, I had a terrible launch, and I ended up upside down in the canola field, smashed prop and bent cage, and took a while to get it back going again. But up I went a couple of hours later and headed off down the road again, and I was looking to catch up to Gary because he was way ahead of me. So this was a better flight. We had an average speed of around 50 kilometres an hour and covered almost 100 kilometres, or just on 100 kilometres for the flight. And this is where I pushed it and hoping to get to Malawa, and almost got there, and then a few kilometres short I ran out of fuel. But I was expecting it, and I was prepared for it, so I was close to the road and looked for a good spot to land next to the railway line, and come in and landed without too much problem. Only 4 kilometres short of our destination, so this was the first time that I packed up the Paramotor and put it on the back of the truck and drove the 4 kilometres into Malawa. Malawa proved to be a lovely little town, and the locals come along to say g'day and make us feel welcome. We had lunch there and prepared for our afternoon flight. The winds didn't die off, and I foot launched from there with Gary and Dave unable to launch on the wheelbase. From there we're headed down to a place called Bunjil, which is no more than a wheat silo on the side of the railway line, but it was enough for us to find a good landing strip and a place to camp for the night. Once again I landed just after sunset, and as per normal my driver Jeff, who was very good to keep up, he was there soon after I arrived, and we set up camp for the night. The next morning's flight, Gary and I headed off down the highway again. We got up early, crack of dawn, and we're looking for a big flight, but the winds were still not really in our favour, and we were averaging under 50 kilometres an hour. And then along the way Gary had a bit of a problem with a loose screw, and it went into his prop and didn't do big damage, but it made him land out at Dalwallinu. Well, I'd lost track of him, and I kept flying on until I'd basically run out of fuel and had to put down at a place called Xantipi. After landing in a wheat field on a little dirt track, I packed up the paraglider and pushed the machine out onto the road, where Jeff came along soon after and picked me up, and we went back to Dalwallinu to look for Gary and Dave. In Dalwallinu we found a hot shower on the public toilet, so we all took advantage of that, because camping out on the side of the road there's not too many chances for a hot shower. After our clean up and food and that, we went down to the next available football oval in a little town called Kalbarri, and from Kalbarri we set off in the afternoon flight. Dave and I had a magical flight along over the wheat fields with the different canola yellow paddocks to keep us interested, and it was a beautiful flight, and we made about 80 kilometres down the highway, and very happy with it. And once we landed in Coorow, the locals come out once again to say good day, and we met a few nice people and got a few donations for the cause for Grab Life by the Balls, and that was terrific, and lovely people in Coorow. They were there again in the morning to see us off bright and early, and they were very interested to make sure we got off safely. And here you can see Dave coming into land on the football oval. One thing that really stood out to us was the well-kept football ovals that we encountered all across Australia, from Western Australia through South Australia. The local communities, even though they might be only a small little town, but their football ovals, the pride and joy of them, and it was really nice to see how well they were looked after. From Coorow we took off on a very early flight to a little place called Warralakan. This was day 6, and day 6 was our best yet. We managed to cover 250 kilometres with 3 flights, and it was interesting to see the landscape below change from the wheat belt and gradually through to Southern Cross, where we then encountered more desert type environment. Gary and I climbed to 3,000 feet where the air temperature was freezing cold. We travelled along there for an hour and 40 minutes until we sort of come close to run out of fuel, so we landed out and set up, get ready for a quick turnaround for another flight into Southern Cross. We looked at the map from Warralakan into Southern Cross, and it was a sort of a roundabout sort of a way to get there, so I decided for the first time really just to cut straight across the farms and head straight for Southern Cross. We worked out well, we didn't get lost, and using the navigation I found it quite easy, and the boys following behind in the vehicles sort of lost track of me, but we all ended up at the same place at Southern Cross, and put it down there for the afternoon, where we went to the post office to collect all our belongings that our spare parts that we'd been ordering online, and unfortunately we were a day early. We'd made too much progress, so they hadn't actually arrived, but we decided to set off anyway down the highway number 1. It was good to be on highway number 1. I knew what that meant. I knew that we were well on our way to getting across Australia, and it was sort of like a bit of an achievement to be on highway 1. So we're following down there, the trucks roaring along below, and definitely crossed over to some new territory now with the desert and and the trees below us, the national park. I was having a bit of trouble with the throttle and couldn't seem to get full throttle, and we landed out for the night and spent the night at a little place called Coorow National Park, and there I tried to clean out the carby, but in the morning that still wasn't good enough, so I changed the carby out completely and took off from Coorow National Park, and it was like I was flying a new machine. I was so happy. It was just performing so much better and made my life so much better. I got an extra half an hour out of my flight times. My rev range was better. Everything was better. It was just brilliant. This was another high flight. Spent the majority of the flight at around 3,000 feet. Gary, on the other hand, decided to see how far he could go up and ended up flying around 7,000 feet, where he was freezing cold, and I didn't fancy being that high. But he had a bit of fun up there and got some good footage. So we met back up down low where Gary was trying to get back onto the highway. There was a fairly stiff northerly breeze coming in from our from the left there, pushing us across the highway, and Gary had to fight pretty hard to get back over onto the highway. And we landed at a little roadhouse there called Bulling, and once again I set up straight away for another flight into Kalbarri, which wasn't that far away, and I wanted to try to get there for lunch, so I punched in across the road there and took off, foot launched, and made the quick little flight down to Kalbarri, and found a nice football oval once again to land on, and Jeff and I had some lunch and waited for the other guys to catch up. The forecast for the afternoon was deteriorating, and there was a lot of rain about and some wind squalls, and I wasn't overly confident about whether or not to do the next flight, but I decided to give it a go because we had a northerly, and I thought, let's take advantage of that while we can. So off I set and made some really good time down along the road there, getting up to 120 kilometres per hour. Before the wind got too much, it started coming more from the westerly, blowing me away from that road. So I had to make a decision to land out, and I saw a dry lake bed and thought that'll do me, and landed there. But unfortunately I didn't realise it was in a mining lease, and I had to walk out 4 kilometres back to the highway to meet up with the driver, and then get my wheels, carry them back in the 4 kilometres, put it on the trike, and then motor back on out. So that was about it for the 7 days. The road between Widgie and Norseman was lined with very tall trees. So with the storm fast approaching, I made the decision late in the day to drive the final leg into Norseman. Well, that's it, folks. I hope you'll join us for next week's episode, where we'll travel across the Malawa to Sejuna. 9 action-packed flights full of fun and adventure.